Hello, everyone. Welcome back to St. Louis Teens, and welcome back to our Election 2020 series. We are excited to have with us today on election night Jack Alex White III, who is a sophomore at Harvard University and is the youngest government official in the state of Virginia. Alex, you serve on Page County's Economic Development Authority and play an active role in your local elections through hosting debates and by writing in your local newspaper. Thank you so much for your service to our country, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for that, Sri. And, it's great to be here. I was telling somebody today, looking forward to this. Now, Mark Cuban and I can actually have something in common because I saw that you were able to get Mark Cuban. So props on that. And
Alex, thank you again for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to go into politics and public service?
yeah, so being from a small town and actually, you know, neither of my parents had gone to a 4-year college. My mom's a bank teller. My dad kind of works as a mechanic and does odd jobs. And I got to Harvard and it was a culture shock. I didn't even think I'd be able to pay for college. And then I got there on full scholarship, and that was a great blessing. My whole community kind of rallied around me. People came out of the woodwork and congratulated me and wished me the best. But the big thing was folks told me to not forget where I was from. And it was hard to forget when you're one of few people from a small town in a place like Harvard. And when I realized that, I knew that our small towns and our rural areas were unique, and I knew that I needed to get involved somehow. And there's a silver lining to everything, and COVID happened, and that meant that I had to go home, and there was actually a vacancy on one of the boards, and I sought that. So I serve on the Economic Development Authority for the county, representing 24,000 constituents and making economic decisions. And it's probably one of the best decisions of my life. That did make me one of the youngest, well, the youngest government official in Virginia in a non-advisory, non-youth role. And we've already been able to have a great impact in doing that. So, I think if you're a young person, looking at the local level is something you should really do. And that's what I did, and that's how I got here. And I'm really glad. And I get to talk to you about it. So,
And it is election night, so I do want to ask, what are your thoughts on the elections so far, results, and what does this mean for the youth of our country?
I think youth are the big story of the night. You're seeing record turnout. Usually your turnout's around 55%. Looks like we're going to top the 60s. And that's young people who are just now registered to vote, just now engaged. And that's amazing. And I mean, whichever way the election goes, young people are going to have had a voice in that. And as we see things develop early, I think it's going to be an exciting and interesting night. And it's definitely going to be a nail biter. But as far as young people, I think the key is we have a lot of energy right now. We showed up for this one. People have to stay involved. And I think that needs to be true at all levels, whether you're going for campus office or local office or, whatever. We have to stay engaged and we have to keep it going because this is a uniquely diverse, understanding generation, and we have more information at our fingertips than any generation before us. So we've got to do right, and I think we're doing right tonight, and I hope that keeps up.
And continuing on the youth vote, Alex, we commend you for hosting a debate in your community amongst your candidates, thereby helping people make more informed decisions. What are some other ways in which we can equip young voters and youth voters and voters in general with more accurate and firsthand information?
Well, I think things like that are huge. And, I was lucky in that we were able to get somebody who had some production skill and we could get the candidates together in a physical location. But I think if you have the opportunity to host a forum through Zoom in your community, it might not even be candidates, it could just be notable people. I sit on a nonprofit in my town called Page County Public Forum, and we host forums about all kinds of issues. We have people from the conservation district, the health district come and talk. We've talked about nonviolent protest, affordable housing, just a whole host of issues. So I think number one is start the conversations, whether that is a forum or a town hall, or whether that's just talking to people. I always try to make a point of talking to anybody about politics at any level, because you miss a lot of stories under the surface if you don't. And on top of that, local media is huge. I really love doing the column for that local news organization that we discussed. And the opportunities are so great. Like I said, getting involved at the local level means that you're not waiting for your turn. You are sitting in a position where you can say, okay, I'm the youngest government official in my state. And that's huge. So whatever you can do at the local level, like I said, starting discussions individually, forums, getting involved with local media. I think one of the most undercovered stories of our generation and the world that we're in right now is the fact that a lot of local media is hurting. And a lot of your newspapers, particularly in rural areas like mine, are, they're strapped for cash. Some of them are closing. You have news deserts, like you have food deserts that have been discussed, previously. So it's a really interesting time. So starting discussions and getting involved with local media and local politics is what I would recommend. And I think however the opportunities present themselves, the key is to just jump at it.
And continuing on what you've already previously said about looking into those local elections, and looking local, you state that young people don't have to go far to change the world. And that's such a powerful statement and very empowering. And as the state's youngest government official, what is the favorite part about your job for you? And can you share with us some of the success stories of your work in the government?
Well, I would say the favorite part is people. The fact that people will reach out and say, hey, I see you're doing this. Here are my ideas. Here are my concerns. This is what I'm worried about. And you're in a position to address those things. And I think ultimately that's what government service is about. We get caught up in some of the competitive partisan stuff at the higher levels. But when you're operating, particularly where you are on the local level, that's the purest form of politics. Actually, at Harvard, I had the opportunity to be a liaison for Governor Bill Walker, who is the last independent governor in the country. He was a governor of Alaska. He was there as a fellow. And he told me that local politics are the purest form of public service, because you see the people, the people that aren't really lobbyists. It really is you exercising the means of government to change people's lives. So with that being said, the opportunities that I've had to do that in just the short time on the Economic Development Authority, we've taken action on broadband accessibility. Our clerk applied for a grant to get a lot of people that are in more remote parts of the county connected at a time when our kids are not able to go to school in the classroom. So that was huge. I actually was able to launch a program where we aggregate grant data for local nonprofits, and we give them access to that for free. And I'm rolling that out actually this month with a press release and local media and my initial list of nonprofits. And we're hoping that that can bring money into the county that would have just gone elsewhere. And the list goes on and on. We actually got to design a program where we would cover employees who had been unemployed or hurt by the pandemic. We would give them a mini scholarship to go and get a career certification so that they can make higher wages and have more job security. I designed that program for the Economic Development Authority. We weren't able to act on it. A few weeks later, we saw one of the local towns adopt an almost identical program. And I think we started the conversation, and that was an impact we had. So, yeah, if you really look outside your door at the community that you're supposed to take care of first and foremost, you can have a big impact. And like I said, that doesn't mean going far. I went very far in going to Harvard, and then when I had to come back, I found that maybe I'd really found where I was supposed to be.
And Alex, as the founder of the Rural Leadership Initiative, you help rural students pursue nonpartisan public service internships in small towns. How do you think youth can focus on policy and solutions over partisanship in a current very polarized environment?
Well, as far as the Rural Leadership Initiative is concerned, that's something I'm really proud of. We funded, I think, 5 or 6 really excellent students this past year for our inaugural cohort. Um, from a person making an album about their experience in rural areas to somebody who's interning with one of the renowned hospitals at Columbia University, all with a rural focus in their research or their work or their background. And that's been great. As far as policy, I would say the key is to look below the surface of what people usually worry about. 9 times out of 10, the issues that are the flashpoints that get people fired up are just wedge issues that maybe don't have that much of a bearing on your daily life. But if you really look, and like I said earlier, talk to people, you can find these problems where the battle lines aren't drawn, and you can start figuring out how to solve them. And again, that comes from talking to people and just listening to the world around you. And it could be something that you don't expect. I'm the policy director for Harvard undergraduates for bipartisan solutions, and we did a policy project that actually resulted in a bill in the Massachusetts state legislature that we hope to try to get passed this year in the coming session. And that was on license suspension for the failure to pay court debt. Now, most people don't think about that off the bat, but that's actually an issue that affects a lot of people in their ability to work, get their kids to school, and have a life. So looking below the surface, talking to people, and if you can't talk to people, your ears are the most important organ, and you got to use those because that's where you're really going to find your grounding.
And you touched on this earlier. It is election night, and the youth voters are really turning out in record numbers almost. I think you said upwards of 60% now. According to Tufts University Circle, or the Center for Civic Learning and Engagement, more than 7 million young people already voted early or absentee in this election. And it's amazing that despite the stress of the pandemic, our youth took the responsibility and came out to vote. How can we maintain this turnout and increase it further, especially in the future?
Well, you're exactly right. And having overall turnout that's topping 60%, having a youth turnout that is even more than that, the early voters that you discussed, on and on down the line, to the fact that, many of our older people that are traditionally your poll workers have been unable to do that. And it's young people that have stepped up, which has been a serious role reversal. And it's because of the risk of the pandemic. So I would say that really, there's not a quick fix to keep young people involved. But I think the key is going to be, finding in our hearts the ability to say to ourselves, it's not over tonight if we get a result that we want to see, and it's never over. And like I said, you've got to get involved and you got to stay involved, and you've got to consume media from all kinds of, different viewpoints. And we just got to stay vigilant. I forget who said it, but the idea that the price of liberty and freedom is eternal vigilance. And if we've got something special and we were able to turn out in support of it, then I think we've got to keep that vigilance. So really, there's not a quick fix for that. I wish there was. I know that I turned out because I had to get my sticker. Hopefully stickers are an encouragement to people. But just whatever folks can do to stay interested and stay into it, because the real test is going to be who is still in the public sphere on November 4th, 5th, 6th, when we have to start working out the issues.
And you urge youth to maintain this energy even after the election. And you state that there is no reason that political participation can't be just as much of a community pastime as local sports or going to the fair. What are 3 ways that youth can be involved in their local government in a fun yet meaningful manner?
Well, it doesn't sound like fun on its face, but going to local meetings or watching a lot of them are being streamed now through social media. Enjoy that a lot. Finding partnerships with educational institutions is something that I've really thought was cool. So whether you're in high school or the local community college or your college, if you can, say you have a professor that's teaching government or civics, and you can find a place where you can bridge what you're learning in the class in the real world through some kind of applied project, that's always interesting to keep yourself involved. And I think beyond that, just realizing that we're the stakeholders and shareholders of whatever democracy we live in, whether that's your town all the way up to the country. And if you take that mindset and just, bookmark the news sources, even if it's the local podunk newspaper that you don't keep up with, you know, writing letters is something that I found interesting. Surprisingly, if you write a letter to your local newspaper, and I know that sounds small ball, the most read page of the paper, whether it's my little newspaper in my small town or whatever you all have in St. Louis, or those are places where people are going to look. The opinion page is the place that people look many times before the rest of the paper. So writing your views and putting them out there publicly, writing your views and putting them out there directly to politicians. I've gotten to meet with my congressman like 2 times in the last few months.
Wow.
And they listen if you're really dogged about trying to get in there and get a meeting and just make that contact. You can get a point across. Our state senator that represents the few counties around me, he visited the polls today, and I didn't think he would, but the guy recognized me because I've been trying to get him to do the right thing and talk to him, and I've been to the meetings. And if you do those things, you really can't go wrong. So I mean, going to the meetings, consuming the media, producing media, realizing that you don't have to wait in line, that you can initiate projects in your community and make them happen. Just finding where you're interested and where you're going to enjoy the impact above all. And then, you're going to be 3, 4, 5 months into it, and you're going to realize, wow, I've really been doing something and I've just been having fun. So, and that's always a good thing.
And those messages are so empowering and wonderful, especially for all the youth out there to really know all the different ways that they can get involved in this process and be involved in that political sort of participation. And Alex, looking forward into the future, what is your vision for the youth of our country? And what are some of the strengths of our youth that we can continue to encourage and grow?
Well, this is the most diverse generation in history. This is the most open-minded generation in history. And I think it's possible that this will be the most politically engaged generation in recent history. And the big thing that really strikes me when I look at the polling, the very early polling of our generation and where they stand, is just not being attracted to partisanship. And partisanship has become a defining factor of politics right now. The idea that I hate you if you're not wearing the same color jersey as I am, and the idea that politics is a team sport. And our generation has shown such a distaste for that. And I hope that even after a really partisan election, that can stick. Because you look at everything that we've grown up with, technology as an example, so many options, so much flexibility, and it's so, contoured to who we are individually and what we demand individually. And politics has not done that. One of the people that we've engaged with through Harvard undergrads for bipartisan solutions is Catherine Gale from Gale Foods. That family, she's talking about how politics has become a duopoly where you have 2 firms that dominate a market and a customer base that does not really like the options. And in any other field, if you had that, people would be up in arms. And I think our generation is going to be the one that's going to be up in arms politically if that continues. So I think my vision for this generation is a politics that's more responsive, a politics that's more nuanced, and a politics that gets more done for us and what matters than what partisan points we can score on either side. And I really, really hope that that's the case, because I think if we've learned anything from the last few months and the last few years, that's what we need.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us. And thank you so much for your time today and answering all of our questions.
Well, thank you. I know I'm not Mark Cuban, but it was awesome to be on. And like I said, keep in touch.
Thank you.